In a prior video help, we referred to this screen as the expense screen. And basically what it does in the expense screen, it looks at all overhead costs and collects information as far as expenses are concerned. Now, this is not project or work order specific. It's a general input for expenses that are overhead account items. So what this allows you to do is in your cash flow on a monthly basis, you can see what you're expending as far as the items where you're coming out of pocket at the bottom line and providing costs and information for the overhead expenses. Now, what we're going to do on this screen, first of all, we're going to point out where we're at and show what we're going to be covering. We're in the expenses screen. We're going to be looking at expenses report, the portal, the picture portal, the employee and employee portal. Let's go ahead now and look at those items. We're on the expense record screen right now. When you come into this screen, what you would do is you would add a new record first of all as an add month or new month, and it would give you the first sequential number for the expenditure ID. You would type in or put in the actual month. Now understand that this is not where you put in the calendar kind of equivalent. It is the month and year. You don't put in the date. The next thing is the sum of expenses is calculated based on the information that you add into the portal rows. So for example, this is the expense ID that will automatically be filled in each time you do a new record by adding anything within that row. Now what you would do here is you would go ahead and click in, put the date in, and what it would do is the next thing is you put in the expense type. In this particular case, it could be any kind of an item like electric bill, gas bill, any kind of percentage of your business cost. One of the other things you want to put in here is your travel expenses, because you can actually do your mileage, for example. When I say travel, I'm talking about if you're going to a job site and you're keeping track of the mileage, this is something that's deductible on your taxes at the end of the year. Even though it's an out-of-pocket expense in overhead, it's something that you can put on your taxes and receive money back. And there is a yes/no tax at the back of this so that you mark it so that if you see something that is saying yes, this is something you want to report on your taxes as a deductible. And of course, it's applicable to whatever the current tax rates are and the rules for those taxes. The expense paid to, and then in this particular case, if it is fuel truck, say like you're fueling a truck, you would put in there the truck information as far as the one you used and the mileage so that you would have a record of that particular mileage. And when I'm saying the mileage, it's not the odometer reading, it's the actual traveled miles. So it'd be like 25 miles or 10 miles or something like that. The expense amount in this particular case would be whatever it is for your mileage account. In other words, if it's 25 cents a mile or whatever it might be like that, you would put it in there. Now, keep in mind that when you're doing a tax item, that if you're doing a 0.75 or whatever the cents are for per mile, that this is not actually an expense in this particular case. So what you are doing is showing it as a taxed item. When you're actually doing your actual taxes, you'll be looking for all the no items, but you're reporting the actual mileage as a separate line item when you do the report. Also, when you're doing that, if you want to get a ticket, like a piece of paper when you're doing your expenses, or actual an invoice, what you would do is you'd use this screen over here to show each one of your individual taxed items for that particular month. And this is a portal, so you can take a snapshot of each one of those and put it in here to cover you if you ever get audited. This is the thing here. Actually, all it's doing is showing the kilobytes, the size of the image that you're actually putting in there. And we suggest to try to keep it at 250 kilobytes or less so you don't end up with a lot of memory stacked into your application just to put in a receipt. If you want to see a large view, you would click here, and what it's going to do, it's going to take you over to the large view, and you can see the large view here has the information, and so you have a very readable version of the tax information or the actual invoice itself that you're paying as far as overhead is concerned. Okay, we now go back down here. What we've done is we've done the expense. We're going to go to the expense report. We haven't looked at the portal. Let's go to the report first, and you'll see a very simple report. This is one that you can actually print, and as before, none of this over here will print, but this will give you the March and the two records here and the summary for each of those. So you have a summary. In this particular case, the sum of the expenditure for the month, and in this case, it'll be all the summaries for all the items for the report based on the items for that date. You can see here's the 7th, the 12th, and so forth. Depending upon what you actually put in your expenses, that'll be the report. And then you'll be able to track each individual expense. Now, some people would say, why are we doing this? I don't see the purpose of it. I'll suggest this to you. I've been doing this for 43 years, and people tend to get in trouble on their bottom line because they don't look at what their actual expenses are on a month-to-month basis. If you look at your month-to-month expenses and they're out of line, meaning that you're not spending what you think you're spending, or you're spending too much, that's what hurts your bottom line. You'll have to go back and look and see where the expenses are and why they are there and what they're covering, so you can see if some people are actually running up a bill on items that they shouldn't be. One of the notorious things that you get people that go to an office supply company, and they buy things that they shouldn't be buying, and they're more for personal use than they are for business use. You want to go back and talk to that person and make sure they don't do those kind of things, because it really hurts the bottom line when you're spending overhead accounts on things that you shouldn't be buying. You should have one person in charge of all that kind of stuff to look at it to make sure that they are in line. Okay, let's take a look at the next item. We just looked at the report. The portal is very straightforward. It's like all the ones you've seen before, with the individual items at the top of the screen for the rows within the report, and then a summary for that month to this point. And you use this portal if you need to. You can delete this record if you have to. I would say it's not a good idea to delete any expense items at all. Make sure that you keep track of them and you keep those that information within the application so people don't play little games with the bottom line. Okay, the next one is the picture portal. We looked at that one where we had the items showing here. Then we're going down to the employee. The employee screen basically does this. It has two purposes. At the top of the screen, what you're looking at here is the actual labor rate and the description of this person's position. You may notice back when we were doing the service and setting up the service that we put in the labor hours. It's based on this information in the employee record, where you create each employee, you put their job description as far as service shop tech, and then the labor rate, which this can be changed at any time if their labor rate goes up. Now, labor rates are typically, if I recall, and it's basis on different locations, it's the base rate, not the loaded rate. If it's a loaded rate, it's going to create a situation where you show that you're paying more than you really want to show as far as the labor is concerned. If you want the loaded rate so that you're charging the loaded rate for your labor, then you need to put that in. And if you don't understand the difference between the loaded and unloaded rates, you can ask your accountant in your own company. Obviously, again, this is another situation like before, where employee ID comes down as you create a new row. And this is a schedule where if you have employees that are temporaries and are permanent, you want to indicate their actual days and their rates. This could actually be used as a time card to make sure that the people are actually working the hours that they say they're working and from when to when. And the work hours that they actually completed will be calculated by the computer, not by the person typing in the date. So if you put 7 to 8, it's going to show the hours. And then the work assignment, what are they doing that day? Are they working in the shop or whatever they're doing? You can put that in. For example, they might be on travel, but they're being paid. You can put travel to Chicago or whatever it is, as far as if they're doing travel on that date. This also is very important to manage, because what it does, employees tend to make mistakes on their time. And if you're managing it and you're having them actually punch a time card or whatever, this is the information you want to go by, the one you use, and verify it with the card that they're turning in for the hours that they actually worked that day. I've seen employees that will do this. They get paid by the hour, and what they'll do is they'll go to lunch and they won't stop their time clock, and they'll work straight through, and they don't actually indicate that they have a lunch break in that process. So in some cases, if you're working 7 to 8 p.m., there should be an hour out of this that would be the 1 hour for lunch, if you don't pay them for their lunch, obviously. Okay, so you can add an employee over here. It's a little different situation than on the other screen. The other one was for the expenses, and this is for employee information. Then you have the employee listing, and this would list all the information that we were just looking at, and it'd be a running report where you'd have all the information in there. Then we get back over here, and you can see that we did the employee and employee portal. So this is the same thing we did on the other one, where you have a portal and the portal shows the information. If you need to, you can delete a row and edit it or whatever you need to do as far as keeping up with that information. Okay, if you have any questions, as usual, you can contact us by going to the main customer information screen and clicking on this icon here to ask questions. This will take you to the website for the developer. Thank you.